Welcome to Family Corner. My name is Bailey Cormier and I am a student orientation coordinator with the orientation program at BSU.
And my name is MJ Evora and I am an orientation leader. Family Corner is a series of episodes featuring different campus partners at Bridgewater State University as they give insight into BSU college experience.
In today's episode, we are discussing the academic life on campus. We are joined by Rita Miller and Lauren Folloni. Lauren is the Executive Director of the Academic Achievement Center here on campus, and Rita is the Dean of Undergraduate Studies. Welcome to being here today. We are so happy to have you. Can you first share a little bit about your role at BSU and how that helps you to interact with students?
Sure. So I'm the Dean of Undergraduate Studies, and what that means is that I'm generally responsible for most of the shared experiences that students have academically at Bridgewater State University. I interact with students usually when we're trying to navigate through some sort of problem, although we also intervene sometimes to help students get through their career path or their college career path a little easier.
And I'm Lauren Folloni, Executive Director in the Academic Achievement Center. So my role includes oversight of all of the departments that are housed within the Academic Achievement Center. And most of my interaction with students, sort of like Dean Miller, is students are coming to me with questions, sometimes concerns. Though I do always like to remind students my door is always open, whether it's my online door or my physical door. And I love to talk with students for any reason. So I hope students will pop their heads in and get to know me so I can get to know them as well.
Absolutely.
Many of the academic services here at Bridgewater, are located in the Academic Achievement Center, or the AAC for short. What is the AAC and what services are provided for students in the AAC?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the Academic Achievement Center, or AAC for short, as you said, MJ, is really the location for academic support on campus for our students. So we have several different groups or departments that are housed within the AAC. They include academic advising for our new incoming freshman students, and also for our undeclared students and our first-year education students. We also have academic coaching in the AAC, which is a one-on-one relationship with a coach to help develop skills for academic success. We have tutoring, of course, and our tutoring even includes some specific content areas for tutoring, so things like math services, writing studio, we have an accounting and finance lab, and then we have a second language services department as well. And we also have student accessibility services in the AAC, so that's a really helpful and important resource for students with any kind of documented diagnosis. So that could be medical, it could be psychological, it could be physical, and so that's really looking to make sure that we're providing an equitable experience on our campus for all students. Last, definitely not least, we have our testing services department in the AAC. The AAC is open 12 months a year. We're always there for students, and all of our services are free.
I think a lot of people think it's only like September to May.
Yeah,
that's
nope,
awesome.
we're always there.
So Dean Miller, you spoke to this a little bit during introduction, but in what ways can a student come to you if they need academic support? What are their options in that regard?
Okay. Yeah, so again, my office is responsible for most of the things that undergraduate students have in common. So that includes things like our core curriculum, which is our general education program. It also includes such things as academic policies. So all students have to follow the same policies.
Right.
But specifically, those are things like the academic integrity policy, the withdrawal policy, class attendance policy, those sorts of things. So we work with students on those, especially when there's an exception to those that they're trying to do in order to make sure they can get through BSU in a timely manner.
Absolutely.
The other area that I'm responsible for is advising in general. First year students and undecided students go to the AAC. And after students declare a major, they go to faculty advisors. But what I do is kind of oversee and make sure that everybody's getting the advising that they need, and I specifically work with helping transfer students in Transfer Central, make sure that students get the advising they need as they come into BSU. I also work a lot. I connect the academic offices with the student affairs offices and the student success offices. So I liaise between a number of divisions on campus and make sure that we're not working at cross purposes, that we're all doing things together. So we maximize the experience for our students.
That's awesome. Wow.
Okay, so on the topic of class registration, I speak from experience that class registration can often be like daunting or a little intimidating, especially for first year students. So how does BSU support students like going through this time, especially first years, as they get ready to register for classes their first time by themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really try to provide lots of wraparound support and communication to new students when they're coming into BSU. So that takes place in a couple of different ways. First, our orientation team, like all of you wonderful students who are sitting in today, really does a lot of fantastic work to help reach out to incoming students and help students to feel comfortable. So that's very important. But also, we provide really comprehensive academic advising for all of our incoming students. And so that is to help make sure that all of the information that a new student needs, where there's a lot, it can be overwhelming. So we want to make sure that students get to have a one-on-one conversation with an academic advisor. So all new students do get that. And we explain the whole process, walk through program requirements, major requirements, and then of course how to select courses and get registered for courses. So it's a really personal approach.
So for the past year and a half, we know our new students finish their high school experience in a remote learning environment for the majority of their traditional first year student. How do you think this experience has prepared them for college living?
That's a question I think that everybody's thinking about right now. I mean, because we've had this unusual experience for a year and a half, and now what do we do? And I think my answer is going to surprise you just a little bit, because I think there's a lot of positive that can come out of it. Now, I don't want to discount that it's been difficult, because it has been. It's been extremely difficult the last year and a half for everybody, trying to figure out how to adapt, how to learn, and also it's been very isolating. Students haven't been able to see their friends, they haven't been able to connect with their teachers in the same way. So it has been difficult. But I think people should think about the positive in the fact is that students have developed some really good learning skills in the last year and a half. Okay? They've had to learn how to be independent learners. And that's only going to help them in the future. They've had to be proactive about their own education. They've had to work with their teachers if they've had a problem with something. And they've had to organize in ways that they have not had to do in the past. And I think very importantly, parents and families have been very involved in the students' education for the last year and a half, because the education is happening in the living room or around the kitchen table or something like that. So families have been very, very involved in that. So I think what students really need to focus on is how do they take what they've learned in the last year in the way of skills and move that forward. There may be some learning gaps that have happened over the last year and a half, because it's easy to have those learning gaps happen in a remote environment. But what students need to think about is that if they find that they're missing in an area, how can they make up for that as they move forward? And how can they take all of those great skills and individual things they've learned over the last year and mobilize those in the future? Because I think this really will open up a lot of possibilities for students. And one area in particular that I think is going to be helpful is a lot of the workplaces are going remote now in some ways, at least partially. So students who have been learning online by themselves for the last year and a half can now take those skills and move them into the workplace. And I think that's going to be really, really important for them in their futures. And as I said, I don't want to discount that it's been difficult. It has been, and we acknowledge that. But by focusing on the positive and focusing on what we've learned in the way of skills and how to change our education and make it more individual, I think students are going to come out of this better prepared for the future.
So how will classes be offered this fall? And is there a particular delivery modality that you recommend?
The classes in the fall are going to be mixed. They're primarily going to be face-to-face in traditional classrooms, like people expect. But we are offering well over 300 fully online courses. And most of those courses are asynchronous online courses, which means all of the content and all of the teaching is going to be through the computer. So again, very individualized for the student, very independent learning. Some of what we're going to be offering in the fall semester are going to be hybrid courses, where students will come to class 2 or 3 times during the semester, but everything else will be online. And some will be synchronous online, which will be through Zoom or some other modality like that. So students, the class, the faculty member will all be on camera at the same time. So it'll be remote. So there's a variety of different ways that we'll be offering classes, but primarily it's going to be face-to-face.
That's awesome.
And then just in terms of, do we have a recommendation, right, around what modality would be best for students? The short answer is no, we don't have a particular recommendation, but the longer answer is really that it's a very personal choice for all students. Of course, that doesn't mean we don't have some guidance that we'd be happy to share, right? So any new student who's coming to BSU for the first time, of course, we're going to have a conversation around how helpful it could be to have most or all of your classes to be right here on campus. This is a new environment, right? So it's a transition period of time in a student's life, and so coming to campus to get to know the resources that are here, right? Like to see the AAC in person, in action, to get to know the buildings so that you know where everything around campus is located. And then, of course, to get to know the people, right? To sit next to a classmate and strike up a conversation, or to be able to, have hallway chat with a faculty member. Establishing relationships with people on campus as early as you can is really an important key to success in college. And that can be done in online classes, absolutely. But to think about starting to have at least a portion of your classes on campus, and we think it is a good approach to take for new students.
That's awesome. So talking about registration again in classes and all that, sometimes you sign up for a class and you're like, maybe I don't want to take this, especially as a first-year student. What are your options necessarily for, enrolling in different classes? The odds and ends of that process.
So first of all, really important, I think, for me to say out loud, it is a natural part of the college process to change your schedule. It will happen to all students. You're laughing because you know it's true. There will be at least one semester in your college career where you need to make a change to your schedule. And sometimes that's because of a class that you were enrolled in. Sometimes it's because you have decided to change your major, and so therefore you need to change your schedule. Other times it's things outside of school, right? So maybe I have a work conflict or a family conflict. So we understand that students need the flexibility to make schedule changes, of course. And so the way it works is anytime you're enrolled in courses and need to make a change before the semester has actually started, so before the first day of classes, students can certainly do that, and they can do that on their own, right in InfoBear. If a student needs help, though, like making decisions or trying to figure out what's the best class I should change into, that kind of thing, then certainly academic advisors are available to consult with students and help them make those choices. It gets a little different after classes start, right? So there's something called an add drop period, and that typically takes place in the first week of classes. For this coming fall of 2021, the end of the add drop period will be September 9th. So that's an important date for students to have in mind, right? And so during the add drop period, despite the fact that our classes have already started, students can still make some changes to their schedule. Students who need to drop a class because they can't take it that semester want to make sure that whenever possible that drop takes place during that add drop period, because that's when you'll be entitled to a 100% refund for that course if you end up taking another class. But so that's sort of how the process works. Before the semester starts, students can go ahead, make changes, advisors are here if they need some help figuring that out, and then they add a drop period for that first week of classes, so through September 9th for this one.
And can I add that it is possible to stop taking the class after the add drop period ends. So that after the first week of classes, we enter what's called the withdrawal period.
Right.
And so students can still withdraw from classes during that. That continues for about the first 8 weeks of the semester. However, once they do that, it might affect billing.
Right.
So you depending on the number of credits that you're enrolled in, you may or may not get a partial refund for that class, and you won't receive credit for the class. So we try really hard to encourage students, if they're going to make a change to their schedule, to do that during the first week of classes.
How can students interact or meet with the professors to get extra support if they need it? Like, for example, if a student wants to be struggling with a class, like with a class or a course, how could they go about meeting teachers, and how do their office hours work, and things of that sort?
The most important thing students can do is get to know their faculty.
Right.
So what I always encourage students to do is go to class, sit in the first row, be sure to come with good questions and ask those good questions. Make sure your faculty member knows who you are. Faculty have what's called office hours. So 3 hours a week, they're in their office in person or virtually, and students are invited to come in and speak to them. I encourage students to show up for office hours even if there's not a problem, especially if there's not a problem. Go to each of your faculty members' offices during the first month of classes and be sure to introduce yourself. Remember, faculty have about 100 students that they work with each semester, some have upwards of 200. So introduce yourself, explain what class you're in, and be sure to talk about what's going on in class. Be sure to ask good questions about what's going on in class, ask for extra reading. I think it's important for students and faculty to connect outside of the classroom, and that's what office hours are for. So, but if there is a problem, faculty and students should get together. I encourage students to make an appointment to see their faculty. Faculty have 10-15 minutes between classes, just like students do. So they're rushing from class to class. So that's not a good time to ask them to explain how they got the answer on problem 2.
Right.
Okay? So make an appointment with your faculty member, go to their office, and then explain that you're having difficulty with something. And the faculty member can work you through it, or will refer you to the AAC, something. But faculty are there to work with students. They enjoy working with students. This is their job. So never apologize for interrupting a faculty member during their office hours.
Absolutely.
Their office hours are for you. Be sure to use them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. That's awesome. So we kind of talked about this here and there throughout all the questions, but higher education can be a rigorous change for a lot of first-year students. Finding independence, understanding academics, understanding student involvement, understanding sometimes if you're a residential student living on your own for the first time. What can students do to seek help in the academic side of the house, and how can families really support their students' academic journey and success, especially at the first year?
Sure. So my response to that would be that students should seek help every day, starting on day 1.
Right.
It's never too early to be utilizing your resources, getting to know who's available to you on campus and how they can be helpful to you, and doing that in a way that feels authentic to you and your personality, right? So when I was in college, I was very quiet. I struggled to ask for help when I needed it. And so if that's the kind of student that you are, that's okay. Maybe you try to use sort of a buddy system approach, right? And so once you've made some friends or a roommate, whatever it is, maybe see if somebody wants to go with you to check out the Academic Achievement Center, ask some questions about tutoring, whatever it is. But also remembering that for traditional students coming right out of high school, there is a lot to get to know on this college campus. There are many, many resources. that you can interact with every day. This place is just chock full of people who want to be helpful, right? So obviously I speak for the AAC. I know that we want you to come in, we're going to be welcoming, we're going to figure out what are your needs, but also we have career services, we have health services, we have counseling center, right? So there is so much here for students to take advantage of. It's never too early for students to seek help. We really want to encourage students to get to know what's available on campus and to find whatever approach works from them, works for them, whether it's coming with a friend, utilizing online services, utilizing in-person services, whatever it is that feels most helpful to any individual student.
I think it's important for students not to see seeking help as a problem, right? I mean, all of us want to learn. That's why we're here. And so there's no problem with seeking some additional help. Even if you're getting really good grades, if you work with other students, if you go to the Academic Achievement Center, if you work with your faculty members, you might be able to turn that B grade into an A grade. Right? So we want to maximize your learning. That's really important. We don't want students just to get by. And so seeking help should not be problematized, right? It should be something that we just do to make sure that we learn as much as we can.
So if you had any advice for the families of incoming students, what would they be?
My first advice for families is talk to your student. Make sure there's really clear lines of communication, and make sure your student's talking to you. That's very important. So everybody's got to be comfortable with sharing information. And the second thing that I suggest is trust your student. This is supposed to be a growing experience coming to college. And there are going to be bumps in the road. And so, families are there to support their students. But the student really needs to do this all by him or herself. That's a really important piece to remember. You can step in if necessary, but there are going to be risks along the way. And students learn the most when they do it by themselves.
And I'll add to that there are ways for families to support and encourage that independence without sort of taking over a situation, right? So if I'm a family member of a student and the student comes to me with a concern or a problem, and maybe they're highly stressed about it and sort of trying to figure out, what do I do, right? First thing I'm going to do is call mom. I still call my mom with everything that comes out, right? So call your mom, call your dad, or whoever it is. And so when mom or dad answers the phone or you're chatting in person, whatever it is, the approach that I would recommend for families to take is to first start by listening, right? Start by really hearing your student, and as Dean Miller said, trusting what your student is sharing with you. And then what you can do in that conversation is to help your student come up with an action plan, right? Here's your to-do list that together we've decided might be able to help you resolve this question or this problem. And then you trust your student to go ahead and take care of that to-do list, right? So you're helping your student to sort of walk through it in their head, right? What are some steps I can try to take to get myself through this? And then you ask your student, with your support, go ahead and do this. I know you can do it. Be positive. You've got this, right? Like, be a cheerleader. And then follow up a couple days later. Call your son or your daughter, your friend, whoever it is, and say, how did that go? Did you get through the action plan? Did you get it resolved? That way they're going to know that you are there for them, that you trust them, and that you care enough to follow up. You want to know that it was resolved for them.
Okay. So thank you, Rita and Lauren, for your perspective on academic life here at BSU. It was very eye-opening for me myself, and I'm sure it will be helpful to many other students as they transition themselves into the university. So thank you all for that.
Thank you both for being here.
It was fun.
Thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for watching today's episode of Family Corner, focused on academic life here at BSU. Be sure to catch our other episodes where we discuss other important topics with campus partners right on the Family Hub website. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.